Imagine this. You're a millionaire living in luxury, thinking you have full control over your life. But one stormy night, someone knocks on your door, and there's a child standing there. A note in his hand changes everything. Watch till the end. You won't believe how this story ends. Comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe for more. The rain fell with relentless fury that night, drumming against the glass walls of the Greystone estate in Cape Town like a million tiny fists demanding to be let in. The world outside was cloaked in darkness, broken only by the rare flickers of lightning that illuminated the driveway and the hedges trimmed to mechanical perfection. Inside, the lights were dim. Classical music drifted faintly from the custom-built sound system, and the scent of aged whiskey lingered in the study air. Daniel Gray, 38, billionaire entrepreneur, founder of one of Africa's leading tech logistics firms, stood alone by the fireplace with a glass of single malt in his hand. The amber liquid swirled idly, untouched. His steel-gray eyes stared into the flames, but his mind was elsewhere, somewhere far from balance sheets, board meetings, and his latest acquisition in Singapore. His life was a portrait of calculated luxury, the kind of life built with precision, strategy, and a total absence of unpredictability. No wife, no children, no emotional entanglements. Everything was structured, ordered, safe. Until that night. The knock came just after midnight. Soft at first, almost hesitant. Then again, firmer, 3 sharp taps against the oak double doors at the front of the estate. Daniel frowned. No one ever came to his home unannounced. Security would have already screened them. He placed the glass down and strode through the grand hallway, barefoot, the marble floors cool beneath his feet. He opened the door. There, in the cold, wet night, stood a small boy, no older than 4, soaked from head to toe, a yellow raincoat clinging to his tiny shoulders, raindrops trickling down his cheeks like tears. In one hand, he held a worn blue suitcase that looked far too heavy for him. In the other, a sealed envelope. No adult, no car, just him, alone. Daniel's breath caught. The boy looked up. Wide brown eyes, unmistakable. Something in them made Daniel's heart stutter. A flicker of recognition, a reflection, an echo. For a moment, the billionaire forgot everything else. The storm, the time, the absurdity, all he saw were those eyes. I think I live here now, the boy said, his voice soft, unsure. Daniel's spine straightened, his jaw tightened. Who brought you here? The boy shrugged and held out the envelope. Daniel hesitated, then took it with a hand that felt suddenly heavy. The envelope was wet, but the inside letter was dry enough to read. 1 page, typed. His name is Liam. He's your son. I can't do this anymore. He deserves better. Don't try to find me. There was no return address, no signature beyond the initial, but Daniel didn't need one. His hands dropped to his sides. His chest tightened. It couldn't be, not possible, yet he knew it was. Suddenly, the past, the night on the yacht 5 years ago, came crashing back like a rogue wave. Maya. The yacht had been moored off the coast of Mykonos. He remembered the champagne, the music, the glittering Mediterranean night, and the quiet girl from the catering crew who brought him water when he was drunk and stayed long after the party ended. Maya. Her name was Maya. She was gentle, kind. And for the first time in years, he let someone in. Just one night, no numbers, no promises. And now, this boy. The front gates hadn't sounded an alarm. No one had seen anything. Whoever dropped Liam off knew the blind spots, knew how to disappear. Daniel looked down at the child again. The boy's lips trembled. He was cold, frightened, vulnerable. Daniel stepped aside. Come in. Liam walked past him slowly, dragging his suitcase across the marble floor, leaving a trail of water behind him. Daniel stood by the door for a long moment, the storm still roaring outside, then quietly closed it. Within the hour, Daniel's private physician arrived and ran tests on the boy. No injuries. Mild hypothermia. Exhaustion. Malnutrition. He was fed, bathed, and put to sleep in one of the guest rooms. But Daniel couldn't sleep. Instead, he sat in his study, the envelope clutched in one hand, his phone in the other. Calls were made, investigators hired, CCTV from surrounding areas pulled. Still, no trace of Maya, no ID, no activity. It was as if she had vanished completely. By dawn, Daniel had arranged for a DNA test. He needed proof, not because he didn't believe it, but because his mind needed something tangible to hold on to. 3 days later, the results arrived. 99.9% match. Paternal relation confirmed. Liam Gray, his son. The news hit harder than any deal he had ever closed, harder than any betrayal in business. He had a child, a son, flesh of his flesh, the one thing he never believed he'd have. And he was left on a doorstep like a package. The following weeks were chaos, laced with grace. Daniel, the man known for firing executives for missing decimal points, fumbled with shoelaces, spilled oatmeal, and read bedtime stories with robotic awkwardness. Liam barely spoke, but he watched everything. Daniel's every move, every pause, every failed joke. The boy absorbed it all with quiet curiosity. And slowly, inch by inch, they started to build something. One morning, Daniel walked into the breakfast room and found Liam drawing at the table. When he looked closer, he saw a sketch of a house with 2 stick figures, one tall, one small, holding hands. That day, Daniel canceled 3 meetings. He took Liam to the park, pushed him on swings, and laughed for the first time in years. Not a polite chuckle, a full-bodied laugh that startled even himself. He bought Liam clothes, books, a telescope, and a bike he had no idea how to assemble. He read parenting blogs at night, hired a child therapist, and converted one of the guest bedrooms into a themed space with stars on the ceiling. And he began to forget what life was like before this child walked into it. Liam began to speak more too, at first in whispers, then with questions, hundreds of them, about the moon, about why dogs bark, about what love means. Daniel answered the best he could. "I want to be a pilot," Liam said one evening, out of nowhere. And Daniel smiled. "Then you will be." 5 years passed. Liam was now 9, bright, thoughtful, obsessed with airplanes. He was the light of Daniel's life, the only person who truly mattered. Daniel's empire grew, but he spent less time expanding it and more time learning how to braid hair for Liam's school plays or attending parent-teacher conferences incognito. Everything was perfect. Until one afternoon, Liam didn't come home from school. The driver, a man Daniel trusted for years, was found an hour later in an alleyway, unconscious, blood trickling from a wound on his head. The van was empty. Liam was gone. Daniel's world, once so neatly ordered, exploded in a single breath. He didn't panic, not outwardly. Inside the mansion, security feeds were reviewed. Private security was activated. Police were alerted. But Daniel didn't trust them alone. He called in private investigators, hackers, even ex-military contacts. Money was no object. Then the call came. It wasn't the police. It was a burner line, scrambled ID. "Mr. Gray," a gruff voice said, "now you know what it feels like to lose everything." Daniel's stomach turned to ice. Who is this? Someone you should have never crossed. Want your son back? You'll give me what I want. You'll give me everything. The line went dead. Daniel stood in the middle of his silent, spotless mansion, fists clenched, rage rising in his throat. They had taken his son. And now they would learn what happens when you threaten a man who has nothing left to lose. The house was silent. Too silent. Daniel Gray sat in the heart of his estate, a place once filled with order, warmth, and quiet laughter, now reduced to tension and stillness. The breakfast table was set with untouched food, Liam's place empty. His blue cup with cartoon planes sat where he had left it that morning, mocking Daniel like a frozen memory. Outside, security guards doubled patrol. Drones hovered discreetly overhead. But none of that mattered now. His son had been stolen. taken by someone who didn't want money but everything, and Daniel knew exactly who it was. Roy Maddox, once a business partner, once a friend. They had built a tech startup together in the early days. Daniel was the visionary, Roy was the connector. Together, they'd raised millions, dominated logistics markets, and rode the IPO wave like kings. But greed crept in. Roy's appetite for shortcuts, for gambling, for backdoor deals had almost ruined them. When Daniel found out, he confronted him and made a hard decision. He forced Roy out of the company, buying his shares at a loss. Publicly, Daniel made it seem like an amicable split. Privately, it had been a war. Roy disappeared after that. No word, no lawsuit, just silence. Now he had returned not for restitution, but revenge. And he had taken the only thing Daniel truly valued. By the second day, Daniel had mobilized more than just his private security. He brought in ex-intelligence officers, cyber surveillance experts, and one of the best child recovery consultants in Africa. No resource was too costly, no favor too big. The first breakthrough came from Liam's school. Surveillance footage showed the moment the driver was attacked. The van was rerouted by a black SUV with forged embassy plates. In less than 90 seconds, Liam was taken. A single frame caught Liam's face pressed against the van window as it sped away. Eyes wide, mouth open, burned into Daniel's soul. In another city, hundreds of miles away, Roy sat in a shadowy apartment with Liam in the next room. The boy was unharmed but shaken. Roy's men were under strict orders not to hurt him. Not physically, but fear, that was allowed, and confusion. Just enough to break him slowly. "You're worth billions, kid," Roy muttered through a cracked smile, staring at a screen filled with news headlines. Billionaire's son abducted. Daniel Gray breaks silence. No ransom demanded. Mystery deepens. Roy didn't want a ransom. He wanted Daniel to suffer, to fall apart in front of the world, to lose the one thing he loved. But what Roy didn't understand was that Daniel Gray wasn't the same man he betrayed years ago. Daniel had become something else. On the third day, the second call came. This time, Daniel answered on speaker in his private war room. Around him sat 4 specialists, his head of security, an encryption analyst, an ex-DSS agent, and his lead investigator. The voice came through, dry and smug. "Still sleeping well, Gray?" Daniel's voice was ice. "Where is my son? You don't get to ask questions. You took something from me. Now you're going to sign it over." Roy didn't say what it was. He didn't need to. Daniel knew. The controlling shares, the ones that had once belonged to Roy. The same shares that Daniel refused to sell back, even after Roy begged. Daniel let the voice ramble until the call dropped. The team got to work. They traced the signal to 3 different bounce points, but the final node was narrowed to a 5-kilometer radius, an industrial zone outside Johannesburg. Daniel didn't wait. That night, a black SUV rolled quietly through the shadows of abandoned warehouses. Inside were Daniel, the DSS agent Adamu, and 2 tactical operatives. They moved silently, calculated. A drone fed them live thermal feedback. On screen, 3 heat signatures, 1 adult, 1 child, 1 unknown. The team moved in, but as they reached the warehouse, the heat signatures vanished. Gone. Empty. A note was left on the floor. "Strike 1, Daniel. Next time, I don't move, he does." Daniel crushed the paper in his fist. His jaw clenched so tightly it trembled. This wasn't just about power anymore. It was about time. Back at the mansion, Sandra, Liam's personal tutor, sat with Daniel in the study, tears in her eyes. "He's such a brave boy. He'll hold on." Daniel nodded. He didn't trust his voice anymore. In Liam's room, untouched toys sat like frozen memories. The telescope by the window still pointed toward the stars. Daniel touched the boy's pillow. His fingers curled around something. A folded paper? It was a drawing. Liam had drawn himself and Daniel holding hands beside a big rocket ship. In the corner in wobbly handwriting, "To the moon with Daddy." Daniel crumbled to the floor, his composure breaking at last. But tears weren't going to bring his son back. Action would. The next morning, Daniel called Roy. "You win," he said flatly. "I'll sign." Roy laughed. "Took you long enough. Meet me tomorrow. Come alone." Daniel agreed, but what Roy didn't know was that Daniel had already set the trap. The meeting location? An abandoned estate once owned by Daniel's grandfather. Off-grid, zero surveillance, one road in. Perfect for an ambush. But this time Daniel wasn't relying on guards. He was going himself. That night, Daniel stood in front of a mirror, slipping on a bulletproof vest beneath his coat. His face had changed. No longer polished, composed. Now it was hardened, sharpened. He wrote a short note and sealed it in an envelope, leaving it on Liam's bed. "If I don't come back, know this. You were the best thing that ever happened to me." Then he walked out into the darkness. The next chapter would not be written in boardrooms or bank accounts. It would be written in blood and fire, because Roy Maddox made one fatal mistake. He took a son from his father, and Daniel Gray was going to get him back at any cost. The air outside the abandoned estate was thick with silence, the kind that comes before a storm. A rusted gate creaked as it opened slowly, revealing a path swallowed by weeds and dirt. Moonlight slashed through the broken branches of overgrown trees, casting eerie shadows across the forgotten land. It was a place long forsaken by time, perfect for someone like Roy Maddox to stage his cruel game. Daniel Gray's black SUV rolled to a halt just inside the perimeter. The engine died, the headlights cut off. Darkness swallowed everything. Inside, Daniel sat motionless for a second, listening to the silence. Then he opened the door and stepped out, a leather satchel slung across his shoulder. Inside were forged documents, the supposed ownership Roy demanded, and a GPS tracker embedded in the clasp. But more importantly, beneath his blazer, a slim Kevlar vest and a wireless earpiece connected to his team stationed 4 miles away. The DSS agent, Adamu, had insisted on backup. Daniel had agreed, but only under one condition. He would go in alone. No negotiations, no SWAT team storming in too early, no risk of a gunshot in the wrong direction. Because Liam was in there, and Daniel wasn't going to lose him again. Inside the estate, Roy waited. He stood by a dusty chandelier, the once grand ballroom now a shell of cobwebs and broken dreams. His eyes were darker now, sunken by obsession and sleepless nights. In his hand, a burner phone. In his coat, a silenced pistol. Behind him, 2 of his men guarded the stairwell leading to the basement. And in that basement, in a room with no windows, Liam sat in a folding chair, hands bound, eyes red from exhaustion, but still alert. A single bulb swung overhead, casting long shadows on the cracked concrete walls. Liam didn't cry anymore. He had stopped crying after the first night. Instead, he thought of stars, of rockets, of the drawing he'd left on his pillow, of the man who taught him how to ride a bike and spell determination. He believed his father would come. He just didn't know when. Daniel stepped into the main hall, his boots echoing against stone. "I'm here," he called, his voice calm but clear. Roy stepped out of the shadows, slow clapping. "Bravo, Gray. I must say, I didn't expect you to come in person. Most men in your position send lawyers." Daniel kept walking until they were 5 feet apart. "You want the shares?" he said, holding up the satchel. "They're yours, signed, notarized. You win." Roy's eyes glittered. "No, Daniel, you win. I just wanted to see what a desperate man looks like." Daniel kept his expression cold. "Where's my son?" Roy nodded toward the staircase. "He's downstairs. Safe for now." Daniel's earpiece crackled. Signal holding, 2 guards visible, 3rd thermal by the far west window. Liam's heartbeat stable. "You have the green light." Daniel's hand gripped the satchel tighter. "Let him go. You have what you want." Roy smiled, stepping closer. "But what if I want more? What if I want to see you suffer? Like I did when you stripped everything from me. You destroyed yourself, Daniel replied. I just refused to let you drag me down with you. Roy's face twitched. Then he whistled. From the stairwell, the two guards appeared, dragging Liam between them. The boy was pale, his lips trembling, but when he saw Daniel, his face lit up. Dad? Daniel's chest cracked open. He took a step forward. Let him go! One of the guards pressed a knife against Liam's neck. Not so fast, Roy hissed. In that moment, everything froze. Then Daniel whispered, now. A single flash blinked on the west side of the estate, the lens of a hidden sniper's scope. Prat. The guard with the knife dropped instantly, the blade clattering to the floor. Chaos exploded. Crack. Another man fell. Roy stumbled backward, pulling his pistol. Daniel dove forward, grabbing Liam and covering him with his own body. Gunshots rang, windows shattered. Agents stormed in from every corner like a flood. Roy tried to run. Daniel leapt up, tackled him mid-stride, sending both men crashing to the floor. You ruined my life, Roy roared, fists flailing. You took everything. Daniel slammed his fist into Roy's face. You took my son. Blood pooled. Screams echoed. Then silence returned, broken only by Liam's quiet sobs. The storm had passed. Hours later, back at the mansion, Liam was wrapped in a blanket, curled beside Daniel on the couch. The boy hadn't let go since they arrived home. Daniel hadn't slept. He didn't need to. Just holding Liam was enough. News outlets exploded with the story. Daniel Gray rescues abducted son in midnight sting operation. Kidnap plot orchestrated by ex-partner Roy Maddox. Father-son reunion sparks national praise. But Daniel ignored the headlines. All he saw was his boy. Later that week, Roy Maddox was formally charged with kidnapping, conspiracy, and attempted murder. His empire, built on jealousy and shadows, crumbled overnight. Daniel made a decision. He transferred a portion of his estate and company holdings into a trust in Liam's name. He changed the structure of his businesses, stepping back from daily control, appointing trusted partners to oversee operations. He no longer wanted to control empires. He just wanted to be a father. Months passed. Sandra returned to teach Liam at home. Daniel's estate, once a fortress, now echoed with the sound of laughter again. Toys, chalk drawings, soccer balls scattered the hallways once cleaned daily by robotic sweepers. One evening, Liam sat beside Daniel on the rooftop, staring through a telescope. Do you think we can still go to the moon, Dad? The boy asked. Daniel smiled. You were always headed there, son. I'm just lucky I get to watch. Below them, the estate was peaceful. But one last surprise waited. It came on a warm morning in the form of a weathered brown envelope delivered by private courier. Daniel opened it carefully. Inside was a single letter. If you're reading this, it means Maya is truly gone. I knew you would eventually find Liam. I never told you I was her brother. I didn't trust you then. But I watched you. You proved me wrong. Protect him. He's all we have left. Daniel stared at the letter for a long time. Maya's brother? He never knew she had family. Never knew someone had been watching. Silently, perhaps even protecting Liam from afar. And now they had trusted him. He folded the letter, placed it in a box of memories, and walked outside. In the backyard, Liam was running barefoot across the grass, his laughter like music. Daniel joined him, scooping him up mid-sprint, both tumbling onto the lawn, breathless with joy. And for the first time in his life, truly, deeply, Daniel Gray felt whole. He didn't just rescue his son. His son had saved him. If this story touched you, hit that subscribe button. There are even more unbelievable twists coming your way. Share your thoughts in the comments and tell us where you're watching from.